Hey everyone, super happy to have you join me. My name is Jackie Wilson. I own Jackie Sweet Shapes. This is my business card, which you have. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, go ahead and give me a like and you will be informed of all upcoming classes and pre-orders that I have. I'm super excited to do this cookie with you. We are decorating this very large cookie, which is probably equivalent to about 3 or 4 cookies. And this is what it will, kind of the design will look like at the end. This is actually for us to practice the writing with the edible marker. But I'm going to spend the first 5 to 10 minutes just kind of setting you up for the class and sort of what all we have in our kit and just set you up for some success. And then we'll kind of tackle this cookie. It's going to be in 2 parts. It'll probably take about 15 to 20 minutes to decorate, and then you'll want to wait 12 to 24 hours before coming back to it. For the sake of time, of course, I already have a cookie. Yes, it got chipped here, but this is what we'll do for the first 30 minutes. And then we will pretend that I took a break and came back a whole day later. And then we're actually going to do the writing, the little lines on the ruler, the detailing on the, what's this? A wrench, or sorry, not a wrench. I'm so bad with tools. Screwdriver. And then we'll do the silver on both the wrench and the screwdriver. Okay, so let's just start with some basic instructions here. First of all, I want to say Happy Father's Day to my daddy who's taking the class. I love you, Dad. So grateful for you and excited to celebrate you on Father's Day. All right, so you have 7 icings. We have 2 yellows. One's going to have a line on it. One does not. You can tell that the one that does not have a line is a little bit like slimier. It's a thinner one. This is the one that we use to flood. The one that has the line is thicker. This is the one that we use to detail and outline, and we'll practice that. Same thing is true for your bluish teal color here. You have one with a line, that's the thick one that's thinner for the flooding. All right, you have white, same thing, thicker. Where's the line? Oh, I forgot to put a line on mine. You have a line. I do not. Boop. That one is the thick one. And then you have the thin one. Okay, detailing and outlining, flooding. I'll explain that. And then you have a red. I happen to have a pink, but you have a red, and that one is also thick, and it's only going to be for the heart that we add to the ruler. But those are your 7 colors. You have an edible marker. Don't worry, it is edible. It is a marker, kind of like a Sharpie, but it is edible. It's made with edible food dye. And this we're going to actually use in the beginning to kind of draw some lines on this, which will help us when we then go to do the icing, because then it kind of gives us the lines rather than having to make our own lines. But then we'll also use it for when we write Happy Father's Day on our cookie. All right, so that'll be in a minute. You have a paintbrush, okay, toothpicks. Paintbrush is going to be used the following day after for the painting once it's dry. You don't want to paint onto wet icing, of course, because you'll ruin the whole thing. So this will be tomorrow or whenever you get to it. You have toothpicks, which are going to be used for spreading that icing when you put it in, as well as popping any air bubbles, but I will get to that as well. And then lastly, you have some edible silver. I also promise that this is edible. It's very, very cool. I gave you a little bit more than you need. However, if it looks kind of dry like mine is, what you're going to want to do is add a couple drops of water. It doesn't take much. I'm going to show you that as well. This is not going to be for right now though. This is going to be for tomorrow or the next day. But you do want it to be a thick liquidy paste. So right now mine is kind of chunky, so I would want to put in a couple of extra drops of water. We'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, I think that's it for that. Let's talk about sort of how to hold the icing bag. We are going to practice on this worksheet that you have. Let's start with the white. So I'm going to teach you how to hold the icing bag and what to do as far as piping goes. The detailing and the outlining is the trickiest part. Just kind of getting used to the feeling of it and practicing the techniques that will give you some great lines here. But first, how to hold the icing bag. You have a knot somewhere near the top of that icing. Now, we're going to have our hand going below the knot, but we want to be above all of the icing. And so what I like to do is just place my icing bag into the palm of my hand. And then you're going to take your thumb like this. We're kind of squeezing our thumb into our palm here. Sometimes I tuck my thumb in like this to get a little extra squeeze because we are squeezing from the top down. So we're squeezing from our palm here, and then you're gonna let your hands just kind of, the rest of your fingers just kind of fold over here. Okay, so that's what I do. I stick my thumb in. I used to do it like this. That's also fine without that thumb tucked in. And then once you have it like this, you move your wrist so that you're upright, okay? Because you want that tip of that icing bag to kind of be more like upright. It's not really like a pen where you're sort of slanted. You're more upright like that. And then you take your finger on your non-dominant hand, and we're going to touch it to the base, the tip of the icing, or you can touch sort of your wrist, and that's going to help steady your hand. And if you're a little bit shaky, sometimes you just have that finger there to steady, and it makes it a lot easier to have a more perfect line when you go to decorate. Okay, so now that we have that, cutting the icing bag is the next step. There's two things I'm going to tell you. One way that you can figure out how to do this is you can line up the very, very tip of that plastic to one of the lines on the worksheet, and then you would cut a little bit smaller than the width between these two lines. So I wouldn't necessarily cut, like right here, but I would cut a little bit smaller off. So just a little smaller than the width between this if you line it up like that. Second trick I'm going to show you is you can also use a number 2 pencil. If you don't have a number 2 pencil, just imagine it or kind of view it from my perspective. But let me get my toothpick. Where the lead meets the wood is about where you would cut. So if you look at your icing bag and you pretend that it's a number 2 pencil, you would kind of cut wherever that lead would meet the wood. Another thing that I like to say is if you cut this icing bag, that little triangle piece that pops off should be about the width of your number 2 pencil. This piece should pop off and look like the lead that comes off on a number 2 pencil should look about like that. So whatever works for you, line it up on the worksheet. Imagine a number 2 pencil, but we are going to cut a tiny hole, and you don't want to cut too much off. You can always cut a little bit more as you go, and we will kind of see if we cut the right amount. These lines will tell us if we did or not. But let's do the worksheet first, and I'm going to give you tips as we go. So after we cut it, there might be a flat line, so I just like to run my fingers through all sides of the icing bag. Okay, I hold it like I practice. Oh, that's thunder, if you can hear it. I love that sound. It's raining outside. Okay, so we actually keep our wrist up on the hand that has the icing bag. You keep your elbow down, but you keep your wrist up. And then you let that icing just kind of drag so that wrist stays up. And then the only time that you touch the paper is when you start, because you want to let it catch. Then you lift your wrist up, and then you drag it along, and then you end, you stop, you dip down, touch the paper to stop the line. So touch to start, lift the wrist up. You want to be about 1 centimeter to 1 inch up off of that paper as you let it drag, and then touch to stop. Wow, that thunder. All right, so closer view, lift, let it drag, and then touch to stop. Okay, so the telltale sign, if you cut the right amount, is this white line. Your icing line should be completely covering the black line because it is, you know, the right width. It's not too big, it's not too small. You don't want to see the black line underneath that white icing. And if you cut too big of a hole, that's why you have another icing bag. You can transfer it to another icing bag. I might show you that if I can find my extra bags, which I will show you that in a minute. But if you cut too big of a hole, what you would do is just take a chunk off of this and then squeeze all of this icing into the new bag that I have given you. If it's too small, of course, you're going to want to cut off a little bit more here. And then let's practice the rest of the worksheet. Of course, just being mindful of how you're holding the bag, letting the icing drag, make sure you're lifting that wrist up. Let it drag. If you find it helpful, use that finger to kind of steady your base of your icing bag or your wrist or your hand. This just takes a lot of practice. This is, this practice worksheet does give us a little bit more confidence to do it on the cookie, get us used to the feel of it, and it also just makes for a better class to allow some time to practice. And remember, every time you start and stop, you dip down, touch the paper, and then you lift your wrist up, let it drag. If you move too fast, it's going to break the line. So if I go fast, I might break that line like that. But if we stay at a steady pace as we keep squeezing the whole time, it's going to allow us not to have any breaks and be perfect. If at any point in this video you need to pause or go back, if you need me, to hear me say something again, of course, that is the beauty of a recorded class. You can do so. You can pause, fast forward, rewind, whatever you need to do. All right. Circles are the trickiest ones here. Sometimes I pull up a little bit higher to have a little bit more distance. Makes it a little bit easier. I kind of manipulate where I want it to go, like right before it falls on the paper. I can move it sometimes if I need to. And sometimes too, if it's already on the paper, you can like lift back up a little bit if you need to fix anything. Your toothpick is also kind of handy if you want to kind of push the line a little bit, manipulate it. You can also settle down any little mountains that might have been formed in the icing, usually at the stopping point. So there's a few tricks you can do. You can also just completely wipe it off if you are unsatisfied with it. Even on the cookie, if you mess up at this step, the very first step, just wipe it off, put it in a napkin, and then do it again. This part's very forgiving. It's the detailing at the end that is not as forgiving. Hearts are pretty easy. Anytime you turn a direction, you dip down. You can either stop and then pick up where you left off, or I'm going to show you on this. You can continue moving and then you dip down and then pull back up to change direction. Okay. Once you finish the worksheet, we're going to practice the flooding here on the worksheet. So the flooding just means you're putting all of the thin icing into the barrier that you have with the outline. So this outline acts as a barrier. It's like a little wall that's going to keep all this icing contained inside. So if you're not done with the worksheet, pause here, finish it, and then play when you're ready to move on. For your thin icing, you do cut a little bit bigger than the hole that you cut for the outline. Just a little bigger. Let me see if I can show you the difference. If I can grab these little pieces. Okay. So this one, if you can see, was the outline one. This triangle was the flooding one. So see the difference there? It's about probably double the size, I would say. Okay, and then anytime you do flooding, I like to start on the outside. I push it close to the line. I don't always need to get right next to it because that's what I use my toothpick for, but then once I have it all on the outside, I spiral inside, and I do want to cover everything inside. I don't want any gaps or cracks on the inside. But then I can take my toothpick and kind of swirl it around in a circular motion as I drag it out to meet the outline there. You can also cover the outline a little bit if you're really particular, or if you really want it to look super clean. And I don't always do this, but since we are decorating just one cookie, you can have a little bit more time to make it look even more perfect. And you basically, a couple of things here, you have about 2 minutes before this icing starts to dry. So like now I can, use my toothpick, I can make a little mountain and it'll set back into itself. But in about a minute, if I poke it, it's not gonna set back in. So you do have a small window of, the time that it takes to get this all in before it starts to dry. Once it's all in there, you pop any air bubbles or whatever, after you're good, you just wanna not touch it at all. Make sure that it does have that time to dry, but it is going to be about 2 minutes and it starts to dry. Sometimes some people will kind of shake it and tap to kind of get any air bubbles to surface up to the top and then poke them with the toothpick. It also does help the icing set a little bit faster. But with this small of a surface area, it's not entirely necessary. Maybe with our bigger cookie, we will kind of tap and shake and all that, but I'll show you all that. Okay, whenever you're not using the thin icing, I do like to fold that tip in and then roll it up just so that it doesn't get all over the place. All right, so I just rolled it up and then I put it off to the side. Okay, moving right along. So that was good practice, hopefully. And now we're going to transfer to the cookie. Okay, so first thing we want to do is grab our edible marker. And I have the same one as you, although this isn't always the one that I use. My favorite is actually, I've got two favorites, but if you are interested in any of these, my favorite one is Cake Craft. This one is cool because there is a thick side, oh, that's a thin side for detailing, and then there's a thicker side for marking up the cookie and that kind of thing, which is what we're about to do. Then I also have this one called Tweets Cookie Connection. I just got this last week. It is amazing because the tip is super, super fine. So you can write very, very tiny. It's awesome. Just got that one. It's been great. Lots of fun. It's kind of like a Sharpie, a very thin Sharpie. And then the one that we have is an older brand called Baker Pan. It's a little bit more easy to obtain. I got it off of Amazon, but they also have these at like craft stores. Okay, so first thing we want to do, we can mark it up a little bit, but really the only thing we need is the line for the plaque. So we are going to draw a line that's going to be just connecting these two. You can use your toothpick if you would like to kind of straighten it out a little bit. But we're just going to mark sort of where this is. Try to give ourselves a straight line. Of course, mine was definitely not perfect. But just to show us where that line is going to be. Makes it a little bit easier when you do go to do it with icing. And then the last lines we're going to draw are going to be for this top part of this ruler. So line up where the top meets the bottom. You can kind of see that rectangle there. And then we're just going to draw that line right there. See that? And then also on the right side. Line it up where the bottom and the top are. This is just going to make it a little bit easier when we then go to do it with our icing. Okay, and that's it for that. We're going to use the marker later for the writing. But let's grab our thick white, which we've already cut. We're going to outline a whole bunch of things here. But the first one we want to do is the plaque. Okay, so now is the time to implement your practice. We're going to follow that line with the white and create this rectangle, which will be our plaque. You don't have to do it all in one motion. You can take a break every time before you turn a corner. And we also want to make sure that we don't have any gaps or cracks within our icing. Sometimes if the cookie itself kind of dips down a little bit, which I don't know if you can tell, mine dips down right here. A lot of times what I'll do to create an extra barrier, because I don't want it to overflood, I'll just sort of go back over it with another outline here. And it may not be the case for you, but I do often look at my cookie, see if there's any spots that are a little bit dipping down, and add that extra line. So that would be the first part. If you don't like it, you can wipe it off and do it again if it's not entirely straight. Again, if you need to pause the video, you are more than welcome to do so. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is the bottom on this wrench here. We're following the edge of the cookie, which is pretty easy. This one is going to get a hole. So if you can see here on this, we're gonna do that little hole. If you wanna grab your edible marker to create that hole, you definitely can do that. This just allows you to make it a little bit more perfect. So you create a hole, so now you know what it's gonna look like with the icing. And then we want to outline with the white. That. A little trick I'm going to show you. A lot of times when you have a very tiny surface area like this, all of this is going to be flooded with white. A lot of times there's something called cratering, which can happen. It's not always the case, but so cratering is basically when the icing starts to dry, if there's any air trapped inside, it'll dent in and kind of cracks when it dries. It's pretty disappointing because it doesn't look as good, but you don't know it till it's already dry. So one of the ways that you can prevent that is just kind of adding some squiggles or dots or lines in here, and it gives it a little bit more strength on the bottom so it won't fall into itself. Okay, since we're working on the wrench, we're also going to do this top part. I guess I misspoke that we weren't going to use the pen again, because we can also use the pen on this wrench, and we're going to mirror the right side, and we want the left side to be like that, the same as the right. Now obviously we have that ruler there, but you can kind of see where this wrench goes from being skinny to then out. And so I'm gonna line up. Again, you can use this for reference. I'm gonna line this up so I know somewhere about there, and then it kind of goes out somewhat like that. And then what we're doing white is going to be this top part of this wrench here, and we're following the edge of the cookie. It's like we want to get close to it without it falling off. Obviously we don't want the icing to run off the cookie. And then we are going to do that line that is part of the ruler, and then finish it like that. Checking to see if you have any parts that dip down. Also, I'd like to give a little dot of icing if there's anywhere that might have a crack. Okay. Next thing we're going to do with the white is going to be the wrench on the left side. Sorry, why do I keep calling it a wrench? It's been a long week, I'll tell you that. The screwdriver. Okay, for there's a little sliver that's going to be silver here. So I'll show you it. We're going to be doing this. Just like that tiny little bit where the handle kind of meets the middle part. And then again, that cratering might occur, so you might want to just put a few dots of icing in there, which will kind of help the strength of it. And then last but not least, we have the bottom part here. The flat head is going to be silver. And again, this part on the right side, you're going to be kind of mirroring whatever you see on the left there. So there will be a little bitty gap between the ruler here and that white part. Okay, after we do that, we want to flood the middle part with our thin white icing. So we're switching to the other white. Okay, and then we want to start on the outside. We're going to let that icing drop on in. It doesn't matter if you're not completely touching the sides, but when we get it all in, when we spiral in, we don't want any gaps or holes in the middle here. I want it to be like a fluffy pillow on top of the cookie. We can use our toothpick to spread it out. And again, if you're sitting here for a while with the toothpick, you're gonna want to add some more icing. You really should not be able to see that icing underneath, and you shouldn't be here for more than 30 seconds spreading it. Should be pretty quick. You might give it a little shake or a tap to help it spread a little bit. to do it. So there's that balance of putting in enough that you don't see the cookie underneath, but also don't put in too much that it overflows. Okay, we do need to let it dry just a little bit, but we can go ahead and outline our screwdriver and our ruler. So let's do our blue first, and we're gonna grab the one that has a line on it, that's the thick one, and cut that hole just like you did in the white one. And then run your fingers through it a little bit and then squeeze it out. Sometimes I do check it. I'll kind of squeeze out a little bit and make sure it's flowing all right. Put it onto my napkin or something. But mine is good, so I'm ready to go. Okay, this part's pretty easy. We're only doing the handle part. So we've got the line here for that ruler. So I'm gonna just go ahead and do that part. Make sure that the blue is touching where that white is, no gaps or cracks. Follow the outline of the cookie. Sorry if my hand gets in the way at all. And we don't need to do a line on top of that white. This will be just fine. Okay. Once you've got that part down, now we can get our yellow, our thick yellow. Again, of course, the one that has the line on it. Cut that little hole like we've been doing. I'm going to test it out a little bit. Make sure it's coming out all right. Okay. Let's do the bottom first here. So we're going to just outline the bottom here. Again, we don't need to hug that white line, but if you would like to, of course you can add that line. I'll just show you on this one here. If you want, you can add that line there. That helps just kind of keep you from going over into the white when you flood it. And then we'll hug this one here. We'll just go ahead and squeeze. You can't really like have space as much when you're hugging, so you might have to stay really close, and then you can pull your hand up when you do the top part. All right, and then hug close to the wrench here. And there you have your ruler. And again, if you want, you can add another line right on top of the plaque. Okay. All right, from here, let's do our flooding of the blue. So make sure, if you didn't read it on your packet, make sure to massage this so when you go, you don't get like a separated color. It's normal for the colors to kind of separate a little bit, so we just want to make sure that they're all mixed in there. All right. And you'll kind of see it on yours. You'll see the colors separate, and then you'll see when they're all mixed in. But do that for about 30 seconds to a minute if you haven't already. We're going to cut a little bit of a bigger hole, and then we're going to flood it just like we did with the white. Start on the outside, get kind of close. And then inside, make sure you've got no gaps. We put in quite a bit of icing in there. Not to the point where it's overflowing, but should be a thick amount. Looks like a pillow, and then just spread it out. Once it's all in there, then you are good to go, and we'll let it dry. And then we'll let that dry. Okay, this white is here. Here is a little bit dry enough, so we can go ahead and add the white on the wrench as well. So let's do the top part first. Flood this. Use your toothpick if you need to. I didn't need to this time because I sort of used the tip of my icing to sort of be like a toothpick. I pushed it to the outline myself. And then on the bottom, we're not going to flood the little circle. Just going to be the slender part here that's around the circle. This might be a little harder. So I would put some in, and then I would use my toothpick to really get the whole area. And kind of push it up to the plaque. Okay. And I think you kind of see where this is headed. We're gonna do the white on the screwdriver as well. That super tiny space is going to be a little harder. So when you feel ready, just drop in a very small amount. And then of course you can use that toothpick and kind of push it into the sides here. You might have to add some more. Like, I don't think I have quite enough in there. But again, if it's not perfect, don't worry, because we're going to be painting this silver. So that'll cover quite a few mistakes, if any. All right, and they have the last part that's going to be white. It's going to be this bottom part here. And then you might need to use your toothpick to get into those corners. Like that. We have one more thing until we take a little break. Well, not a little break, but a long break for you. But I'll show you what we're gonna do tomorrow, or once this dries. All right, so we have our thin yellow. We haven't cut into this yet. Cut a little bit of a bigger hole, the last thing to do is just flood into here. I'm going to start on the bottom, but it doesn't matter if you do the top or the bottom, but flood that icing in. And we're getting close to the edge. We just don't want it to flood into the other parts. So that might be sort of the trickiest thing here. Take your time. Your toothpick can be your friend. If you don't want to get super close to the edge, you can use your toothpick to kind of push it. Okay, make sure it's all in there, it's not bumpy. Sometimes you have parts that have more icing on it than others, so that's why I'm just kind of swirling around. You can also give it a little shake. And after you finish the ruler, you are done with the first part. And as crazy as it sounds, you will take a long break and you will let it dry. It takes about, I said 12 to 24 hours. You can sometimes push it to 8 hours, but the longer the better, especially when you're going to do the writing. I'm not going to take a break. I'm just going to go right into the next one. So if you want to stay and watch what you are anticipating for tomorrow, of course, you can feel free to do that, or you can just pause the video here and come back when you're ready to pick back up. Okay, so let's pretend that a day has passed. And now that beautiful cookie looks like this, minus the broken part on the bottom. I honestly don't remember how that happened, but that is okay. All right, first thing we're gonna do, and there's really no wrong or right thing to do first, but I do want to take some time to practice this writing. So you'll take your edible marker, and I gave you 2 of these worksheets to practice. And we can practice sort of what we want this to look like here. Of course, it might not look completely like this, but this is the writing that I've chosen. I think it's super cute. It's obviously not going to look the same as this because we're freehanding it. We don't have the projector to make it perfect and trace it. But we can kind of get a good feel for how it's going to be. Feel free to do print if you would prefer writing that, or your own kind of cursive. But if we've waited long enough for it to dry, we will be able to mark on this without it poking through the icing. So it's hard enough we're able to do it without poking through and messing up that icing. Now, of course, the question is my writing going to look just like that? Well, probably not, but we'll see. So let me have this as visual here. All right, and make sure you don't forget to breathe as you are concentrating. But let's go ahead and write on here. And we're going to try our best to get all the words on there. And of course you can go back over, a couple of times if you need to clean anything up or, fix anything here. One last one for me. And add an exclamation point. Cool. That turned out better than I expected. I hope the same for you. If you do really kind of bomb it, one thing you can do that I have found to be not too detrimental is you can wipe it off with some water and a napkin. However, you are going to see a little bit of residual black under it, but if you absolutely bomb it, you can take a damp paper towel and wipe it off. Okay, the next thing you're going to do with the marker is create these lines here. So you've got these lines, top of the ruler. One thing that I found to be helpful is I actually rotated it since I'm right-handed, and then it allowed me, obviously there's a chunk there, but I would make one there, there, and there. It allowed me to kind of have a little bit more control. You have smaller lines and bigger lines. Just like that. Oh well. Okay. That's the pen. If you're still working on it, again, pause the video if you need to. Next thing we're gonna do is painting. Super fun. So again, if yours looks kind of chunky, you might want to add some water. This was mixed with vodka, which is much better than using water. However, when you're only adding like a few drops, it's no big deal. Just be careful not to add too much. I like to put it in my cap here. I only literally want a few drops. Like, not much at all. Okay, we're gonna mix this up. Should give us a nice paste here. Okay. This part's fun because you're gonna paint all the parts that are white except for the plaque. All right, so we got this handy. We're gonna use it as we go, but don't be afraid. Just take that paintbrush and paint it all on. You might see some of that white underneath, which is fine. You can grab some more. You can also do a couple of coats here. You can, let it dry for a little bit and then add another coat later. But let's take some time painting, having fun with that. Again, don't worry if it's not perfect. You can add another coat, which will make it look even better. All right, take your time. I'm working finishing the wrench, and now I'm going on to the screwdriver. The hardest part might be the little sliver. You might have to rotate your paintbrush. If it is dry enough, you might be able to add another coat, but you might have to wait. I think I have to wait a little bit longer. It's still pretty wet, so I might have to wait on that. Okay, very nice. Hopefully that was fun for you. The last two details are on the screwdriver and then the little heart. Screwdriver is going to be pretty easy. It's going to be the blue with the line on it. You're going to do one line straight across, kind of where it juts out a little bit. I messed up there, so I'm going to try to fix that. Okay, one line there, and then you've got 3 lines. One's going to be down the middle, and then 2 on each side. So, well, 1 on each side, I mean. I kind of angled those ones a little bit to make it look a little bit more two-dimensional. The heart is going to go on the bottom here, the right hand side on the bottom. But I'm going to show you how to do the heart first. So you have red, I've got pink, but the hearts are fun. So you squeeze and squeeze till you get the right width, and then you drag down. Squeeze and squeeze, drag down to meet it. So you're creating these 2 teardrops that then come together. Okay, you can add a little bit more if you want to make it bigger. You can also just outline a heart and then flood it with the same icing. That's also an option. I think that the teardrop ones are a little bit more fun, but that heart's gonna go right here. Like that. And there we have it, folks. Happy Father's Day. Your cookie will be good for up to 2 to 3 weeks. You'll want to put it in a bag if you do wait that long, or you can just eat it right away. It fits perfectly in that little bakery box that you that it was shipped in. If you do want to add another coat, wait for it to dry, and then you can add that other coat if you want to make it a little bit more silvery. But other than that, that is it. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or message me. You have my email on my business card. You also have my phone number if you want to text me. But I hope you had a great time. Hope you learned some things, had fun with the painting and the writing. Hopefully it wasn't too intimidating to you, and hopefully it worked out. That's a thumbs up. All right, take care, be safe, and be well.